Welcome back to the GP Productions podcast. Okay, welcome back to the show, and today I am joined by Steve Spade, an Irish magician. How are you, man?
Hey man, thanks for having me. Apologies for being in the car. I didn't get a chance to get home yet. So there we go. Kind of just a little bit of Christmas shopping and run around doing a few bits today.
It's all good. Finally good to meet, albeit virtually anyway.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I just saw the intro there. You've had some great guests.
Yeah, I know we're adding another one to the list today.
I wish I had a better story.
We'll kick into the story now that you mention it. How did you decide that you wanted to get into the magic world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question I get like asked, anytime I get interviewed on anything or media or print or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always I know a lot of magicians had I got a magic set and all that. And my story's a little bit different. That my uncle was a magician, so from a very early age, I got to see kind of good close up magic and sleight of hand, kind of readily available. Now, typical kind of Irish uncle, I'd only meet him at like a wedding or a funeral or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's a doctor, Michael. And yeah, so it was just, and then he saw that I had the interest, and I was blown away. This very first trick I saw that he did, where he had a matchbox and he put it on his hand, and he'd say like up up kind of a thing, and the box would open and stand up, and one match would fall out. And we were all blown away. All the kids would like kind of circle around him, and you'd never know what kind of trick he'd have. But when he saw that I had a bit of interest in it, every time I met him after that, and that was from like kind of five onwards. I mean, he'd have a trick for me, or he'd have, and as I got older, he'd have a book for me, and then he started highlighting the better tricks in it and things like that. So there was that influence, and then I suppose I was just kind of obsessed with like Copperfield and watching all that on TV as well. I'm older than I look, but so there was a bit of that as well. And then I suppose my brother was into magic. He didn't perform it, but he loved watching on TV. So we used to all like sit down and watch Copperfield and the specials and all that kind of stuff on VHS and everything else. So there was kind of both sides. I kind of saw it in face value, and I saw it in the kind of the grand illusion. And then I used to like annoy my mom to go and find like cardboard boxes and done so I could try to like cut up one of my sisters or whatever. So I had that kind of creativity type thing was there, that I was like, well, I can do that. It's just a box kind of a thing. And I try to figure out the tricks. And I suppose that kind of inquisitive kind of nature, if there's kids out there and they're like that, magic is probably a good place for them to start as a hobby or whatever. Because if you've got that kind of inquisitive that you want to know how it's done, but you don't want to kind of ruin the surprise, you don't want to like expose it or whatever. You just want to kind of know. I think that kind of a person or kid can really kind of develop into being a very good magician.
And in terms of your style of magic, then, could you describe what that is? And did you take any influence in your magic style from your family?
It's a great question. My style, I suppose, has just been very much my own style. I've always been a big fan of like rock music and that whole kind of genre and all that kind of stuff. And I
Yeah.
used to play like electric guitar in a band and stuff like that years and years ago. And I used to teach guitar as well. So I suppose those little influences have been kind of there. But I mean, you have to suit up sometimes when you're doing a corporate event. But I'd always keep it my own kind of style, as in image wise.
Mhm.
But yeah, I suppose my style of performance is, I've always been more drawn towards. I'm a big James Bond fan and Mission Impossible and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been drawn towards the kind of danger magic and the escapology side of things. I remember seeing the Tony Curtis movie with my dad. My dad passed away 3 years ago, but he was a big. He used to really kind of help me develop my. I suppose without even knowing, I guess my character and kind of who I am in magic. But yeah, it would have come from like the Houdini stuff, and then being years later when I started doing stunts in Ireland to be called like Ireland's Houdini by the Irish Times and things like that. It's a huge honor that kind of just happened and kind of fell into place. But it's kind of funny. There's weird little similarities in my career and Houdini, which is a kind of an unusual crossover, which weren't planned. Just kind of happened that way.
And in terms of the moment, then, with the way the world is, obviously the last couple of years have been tricky and stuff like that, but you found yourself quite busy at the moment in the virtual world. What's that like compared to a live audience? How does it weigh up for you?
Yeah, so at the start, there was even talks of trying to do like a virtual stunt, and I was talking to a company who wanted me to do something, and they wanted to film it in a warehouse and stuff like that. But we decided, with the stunts especially, I think they're so kind of raw and organic. You kind of have to see it at face value for it to be impressive. And the last few ones that I've been doing, have been kind of challenge escapes, and people are challenging me to escape a certain thing in a certain amount of time. So I think they have to be. I have three actually on kind of on hold, and they have been since the very start of the pandemic. Now one was meant to be happening the year after, but now it technically should be happening now, if you know what I mean, because you're
Yeah.
always like a year ahead when you're planning these kind of stunts, just because of red tape and things to do them. You know, they're pretty crazy things to try to plan. And to try to get teams and crews around it, but yeah, I mean the virtual stuff, it's different, man. It's very different. You know, it's one good thing I suppose is that it makes you think outside the box and make you kind of creative, be more creative. I was lucky; I fell into two movie consultancy roles while during the pandemic. So I worked for Universal Pictures for Cocaine Bear, and I worked for Netflix for I Can't Talk About It. So
Hmm.
it's not called that, but
Yeah.
NDAs out my ass these days. So can't say a whole lot, but yeah, but I got to work with some actors and teaching them some sleight of hand and things like that. So that was cool. And then I got to work with some of the special effects departments, which I hadn't done a whole lot before. It was always
Yeah.
very hands-on stuff I did. So yeah, between that and some virtual shows, obviously I miss being on stage. I miss doing the stunts, because they're just such a you don't get the adrenaline buzz kind of like off anything else other than live escape or live shows.
So when you're filming a virtual show, just two questions on it. Where do you film it? Do you film it at home? And second, is it interactive?
Yeah, so it's fully interactive. I've seen some shows by fellow colleagues and stuff like that, and it wasn't as interactive. It was more like just sit here and watch the magician kind of. So
Hmm.
no, I decided to switch that and try to make it as interactive as I can, where it's kind of like the audience are the magicians. I'm trying to give them the ability so they can do stuff in their own home. Yeah, setting up studio wise, I've used a few friends that have production studios and things like that to do it, but majority of them, the smaller shows, will be just from at home.
Yeah. And
So
in
yeah,
terms
like
of
the backdrops and I've got more magic I've got more like virtual gear now than like magic tricks, with ring lights and everything else and microphones.
yeah.
But it's just one of those things we all had to kind of adapt and make it work. I was quite busy with the movies though, and I've got a 10 month son as well, baby Michael. So between that and that, I didn't rush out to do every gig that was offered to me. I just couldn't. I had other commitments, but yeah, no, it's been good, but I mean, I can't wait. I mean, on stage is where live performers thrive, so I miss it
Yeah.
completely.
And people definitely miss it as well. Like no matter how good something might be virtually, it's just not the same when you're there in person.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it will come back. There's been little tastes of it throughout. When there was like a little bit of lift in restrictions, you kind of get a gig in or an inquiry or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I've no doubt that it's going to bounce back, and I think kind of like after the Spanish flu, 100 years ago, maybe it'll come back into that like Roaring Twenties, that kind of gaspy kind of thing would be awesome, where live theater and that kind of style would all really thrive again. So I think people are going to be so hungry to see live performance, and they'll never want to see another virtual show ever again.
What is the most dangerous stunt that you've ever done?
So there's been a few, because there's been a few kind of injuries with them, because usually I've been lucky in one way and it's kind of unlucky in one way. So none of the big stunts that I've done, I've ever been injured on them. I've had injuries after and before in rehearsal and afterwards with, something happens kind of after the fact. So one of the most dangerous ones I did was the last challenge escape I did, which was I had to escape from a mobile home. It was a challenge escape. So this company in Northern Ireland challenged me. They owned holiday homes and mobile homes and chalets and all that kind of stuff. And I put up an open invitation kind of thing to challenge Ireland's Houdini kind of thing. My dad had just passed, and it was something that we talked about before
Hmm.
he had passed. And I was just kind of like, what will I do next? I'd done like blindfold drives, and I had done like escaping fire and underwater escapes. And I was like, what do I need to to do. And then we talked about kind of Houdini and like that he would accept challenges from different companies, or if you made like the most unbreakable steel or something, he'd say, I can break, I can get out of that, or whatever, or prisons or whatever. So we were kind of thinking along that line. And it was only in the so Dad passed away in the October, and it was only about 3 months before that we were chatting about it. So it was very kind of fresh. And then Dad had passed, and it was a January after that Christmas, and I was like, you know what? It was probably 12:30 at night, and I probably had too many Jamesons. And I went, you know, fuck this. I'll go onto Instagram and I'll say, come on, challenge me. I've been called Ireland's Houdini for long enough. Challenge me. So this company did, a few companies at the time challenged me, and there were some funny ones from friends too, because I thought I'd like lost my mind. But this company, you know, kind of sparked my interest. And to be honest, when I got the first email from them, I kind of ignored it because there was other bits and pieces coming in. And then about a week after I ignored it, they had like a call out video made, a production video saying, we want you to
Wow.
come to Blair Holiday Camp, and we want you to do this. So initially, it was to get out of the mobile home in 90 seconds before a wrecking ball would hit it, but it changed closer to it because they were able to get a shipping container. And I had just done some work with Vikings, so I knew the stunt guys and the coordinators there. So then I roped them into it, and then we decided we were going to blow it up. So I had 90 seconds to get out before it got blown up and crushed by a shipping container. Because I'm a glutton for punishment. And yeah, and it was a great stunt. It was a really good. Meaning, it was great. It was great to go up there, kind of unknown, and then have a little bit people kind of a bit standoffish, kind of they didn't know what was going on. And then by the time the stunt was over, and I reappeared, and there was kind of a kind of a mess up in the middle of it, like a disaster, and then it all turned good. Just kind of down the garden path, a very typical kind of illusion type, magician type thing. But when I reappeared with the audience and everyone, you know, people who didn't know me an hour before the show were running up to for hugs, and people, you know, was trying to get me to sign bits of the blown up mobile home and stuff, just because that excitement and that energy was there. That okay, everyone thought I was dead, and it had all gone wrong, and now you kind of and Houdini knew that, you know, Houdini knew how you can bring an audience down that path, you know, and then flip it back on
Yeah,
themselves, and
emotionally.
then you're heightening their emotions and everything, and it becomes a lot more than just an escape. You know, everyone's putting themselves in your shoes, or a loved one in your shoes, or whatever. So yeah, it was great. And the BBC caught wind of it, and Steve Nolan had me on his talk show, and then I got to perform with him as well. I did a Russian roulette type trick with him. So yeah, it was really good at the time. It was a really exciting, because it was a challenge, and it was the first of that type I had done to that scale. I think it was my favorite one to date. But I mean, there's so many different ones in the pipeline.
Mhm.
I have friends that are musicians and performers and stuff, and they're always giving me mad ideas. I think they just want to try to kill me off or something, less competition or something. I don't know, but they're always like, do it this way or do it that way. But a really good friend of mine who does the podcast, that we set up a podcast during the pandemic. It's the first lockdown, really, and it was just kind
Mhm.
of purely out of boredom. And it's called Deceive Reality. But now we're up to nearly the 40th episode, and we've had magicians that have been on Penn and Teller, Fulas, consultants for David Blaine. We've had guys on that are like Vegas, you know, performers, America's Got Talent winners, Britain's Got Talent winner. So it's been incredible. You know, it's one of those things that just spiked. And like Dave Peace, who does the show with me, he's helped me with like any of the stunts that I've done over the years, and yeah, he's definitely trying to kill me off. That I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. And you can find that podcast, I believe, on stevespademagic.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's this deceive reality. So yeah, we did a whole section on as well, and like females in magic, because there isn't there's actually lots of them, but there isn't very many that are like documented. So we had a few different performers that have kind of dabbled in circus performance and magic and things like that. So yeah, we actually, one of our highest viewerships on one of the episodes is a girl, Emily England, who herself and her brother have a roller skating act, but she's quite an established magician, and a lot of people didn't know that. And she's a massive like love and interest for it. So it was cool to have her on. I mean, and I suppose you find it yourself as well when you've got people on. You probably have this one kind of idea who that person is until you can start kind of
Yeah.
getting to the nitty gritty. And what we find cool on the podcast is no matter what question you ask to whatever, because everyone's such a high caliber performer, the answers are always quite similar, which is amazing. You know.
Yeah. Um, was there anything that's ever happened to you on stage, a trick like in front of a live audience that maybe went wrong or maybe was going wrong and you had to save it or anything like that?
Yeah, so I used to do, and I still do, the 100-foot rope escape, which is like a challenge escape as well. Houdini used to do it regularly, and so I was tied up with that, and I was had a straight jacket on as well. So I was in a straight jacket, my arms crisscrossed over and wrapped in rope. And as I was getting out of everything, my thumb pushed all the way back and dislocated. So it
Ooh,
was completely loose. It was like hanging. My thumb was all the way back. It was nasty. And I kept on going with the stunt because your adrenaline is in and you just want to get out. So and everyone's watching, so you just have to get out. But in typical Irish fashion, when the stunt was all over and I got out in under a minute or whatever it was, everyone wanted to come up and shake your hand. So I'm there with like a limp, busted hand, and everyone wants to shake your hand. So I just shake a hand, and literally like I'm holding back tears nearly at this stage because my thumb is in bits. And this random woman comes up. It's part of a charity weekend. They were doing fundraisers, and I was one of the acts. And this woman obviously saw what had happened or noticed what happened, and she went to some chemist or something and bought like an ice bag type of, the ones that you just automatically press and they get cold. And she just
yeah,
gave it to me, and then she was with her kid. Now the kid looked horrified because of he could see my thumb was like this.
mm,
And she gave me the bag. I never knew who she was or anything. So if you're listening by any chance, thanks so much for that ice bag. It was definitely needed at the time. But that was definitely one. I blacked out underwater a few times training for stuff and trying to get your get just the time of holding your breath better. But obviously with crews and stuff and people around you that you trust and stuff, it's scary, but it's good to have those people near you. I suppose at the very start, my crew was like my family. So it was my brother, my dad, and the first underwater box escape. I made the box myself. It was like a bit built from like a tea chest, like Houdini would have used. So I did that, and that tied into it. It was meant to be a charity event as well. Initially, there was a friend of mine, and he was an amputee, and he was walking from Dublin to Limerick to raise money for
okay,
the hospital and kids
mm,
hospital and everything else. And he asked me, "Oh, just turn up on the day and just do some card tricks and whatever." And I said, "Yeah, sure." And by the time I went into the meeting and came out, they were like, "No, no, do something really big, do some like underwater thing or whatever." So I hadn't even really planned to do anything like that at the time, but then I had about 6 months to train for it. So yeah, it was fun.
wow. In terms of like you've played in a lot of places all over the world, virtually and in person. Is there any particular show that stands out to you as your favorite one ever, and for what
There
reason would
was,
it be?
yeah, one of the first times I was in New York, and then I actually went back there again. But there was a nightclub there, the Moxie, and they have a place thing called the Magic Hour, and they have a thing called Sunday Bubbles as well. And the Magic Hour, I remember performing at that, and you're just like it's literally underneath the Empire State Building, so it's just left of the Empire State Building. So from the big beer garden at the top, it's like a VIP area. You can see all that, and that's the skyline of New York. And it's just one of those real surreal moments that you're performing in this kind of, because we all see like New York and American like TV shows growing up. And I mean, I remember watching all the David Blaine specials, and I remember the first time, like,
Yeah,
even when I performed in Times Square and did some street magic myself in Central Park when I was just there and stuff, and we filmed it and put some stuff online. It was just a real surreal moment to kind of perform where you've seen it on TV. And for anyone that hasn't been to America or whatever, that's what America kind of feels like when you first go there. It's just got that, oh, but it looks like the movies kind of thing. So LA is the same. But yeah, no, I just think places like that, they always just kind of, there's a few places like I suppose that I traveled. I was lucky enough the last time I was in New York before the pandemic, I got to visit Houdini's grave in Queens, in the Jewish graveyard there. So that was another surreal kind of thing to do. Just wanted to pay respects. We took like one picture. I didn't want to make a publicity thing out of it. I just one picture, and
yeah,
just there for a few minutes, and it was amazing. It was amazing to find it. The few times I had been in New York before, I didn't get a chance to get out there. It's really really hard to get to where it is. So I was lucky enough to get there this time. But it was a bucket list thing. I wanted to do it since I knew he was buried in Queens.
yeah, because of the personal connection from your shows to him, like.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to, so much of my career is credit to him and what he did. So I mean, I just wanted to pay respects.
Yeah. In terms of going forward, then, what have you got coming up? I know it's kind of a grey area. Is there anything you can talk about? Any plans you have for next year? I know me and you are collaborating with a famous Hollywood actor that will remain unnamed next Halloween in Dublin. But apart
Yes.
from that, what else is going on?
Yeah, so yeah, no, there's a few things. I mean, with the movie stuff, there's more of that. I mean, the special effects guys have been on to me about other things that they're working on. The second movie that I worked on came from that. So when I was working on one movie, one of the similar special effects guys was like, "Is there any way you could do it this way?" Thinking like a magician, could you do it this way, kind of thing? And I said, "Yeah, 100%. Let's give it a go," kind of thing. So then I worked on that set, and that's kind of how those things work. They kind of roll into each other. So
Hmm.
there has been inquiries in. I'm hoping to tour. I've a show written since 2019. So it's a brand new show. So it's kind of a mix of Victorian magic and modern day kind of I suppose whatever the style is that you kind of see, that kind of more street magician kind of a feel.
Yeah.
So the mix of that. There's 3 stunts in the pipeline that have to happen, or I want to happen, and hopefully, once restrictions lift a bit more and people can get back out, and you can, there's no point putting on a big stunt and only having a limited crowd. You want a couple of
Yeah.
thousand, for it to be kind of an experience for everyone. So we're going to hold off until it's the right time. Um, Something I haven't talked about anyone is we've planned something for Dublin. I can't say what it is or when it is or what it is or anything. But yeah, it will happen. It's a crazy thing, and it's based off a stunt that a magician in Canada that I've been doing a lot of work with and consultancy back and forth with did in his hometown many years ago. So we've decided we're going to do it in Dublin, and it'll be very guerrilla style. So we haven't gotten a whole lot of permission for it, let's just say.
So it'll be kind of last minute job, and this is happening now. Go there, and that's it.
It'll be, yeah, exactly. The way we've designed it, and the press release is kind of written up, is kind of like the media will get the kind of the heads up that morning, and it'll happen at noon.
Okay. Okay. I'll have to be off that day. I'll have to make sure I'm off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's something that we planned before the pandemic, and it just didn't happen. And
Yeah.
but yeah, there is a few things in the pipeline, that I've been working on. One thing about the pandemic, I guess, is everyone had time to kind of sit back a little bit and reflect and kind of like, okay, where are we going from here, kind of. And I've been able to reach out to some TV producers and like that, actors and other things. So there's a lot of different collaborations happening next year, which I don't think would have happened if the pandemic hadn't happened. So if
Yeah.
you can take any kind of good side of it, the collaboration side of it is fantastic. I mean, even with our own podcast, 40 episodes in, interviewing 40 people. I mean, that's such a massive vast of contacts and people we're all in the same boat in that same
Yeah.
in industry. So it's great just to collaborate with people in general. And you can always come up with different things. One of the honors during the pandemic as well was I became the only Irish member of the Global Association of Escape Artists. So it's the top escape artists, and I got one of the guys that runs it is Andrew Basso, who's like the Italian Houdini, and he would tour with the Illusionists in Broadway and Singapore and all over. So yeah, so that was a cool honor, and the accreditation was, I just sent them a kind of body of work that I've done, and then they were like, "Yeah, you're in," and I was like, "Can I get kicked out for anything?" And they were like, "No, not really." I was like, "Cool." So that was it. So once
Brilliant.
you're in, apparently, that's it.
Man, we'll have to have you back on again. It was great to chat to you today, and best of luck for 2022.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, and it's so good. But I mean, the more of this, the better. And I can't wait to do that collaboration with you and he who will not be named.
Yeah.
But it's going to be awesome. I mean, and that's something as well that's been in the pipeline for a while. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely. Anytime. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Cheers, man.
All the best, man. Take it easy. Happy Christmas.